Okay, today we will learn what are mixed numbers. What are mixed numbers? Look at the screen. What do you see now, please? You see one half. You see one half. This means if you have a pizza and you divided it into two equal parts, so this part is 1 out of 2. So we call it one half. 1 out of 2. 1 out of 2. Okay, if I bring another half next to it, they will be two halves. Okay, and now if you have two halves, Kinan, two halves makes what? One what? Yes, one what? What is this?
one pizza.
So two halves makes one pizza. In math, we call the whole pizza, we call it one whole. We call it what? One whole. Okay, so if I have two halves, if I have two halves and I write it like this, two halves. This is one half and this is two halves. Two halves makes one whole. Okay? If I can count in steps of one half, so I can say like this: one half, two halves, three halves, four halves, five halves, six halves, seven halves, eight halves, nine halves, and so on. So if I want to write, for example, five halves, I will write it like this: five halves. If I want to say eight halves, I will write it like this: eight halves. This means also 8 over 2, 5 over 2. So 1 half, 1 over 2. 2 halves, 2 over 2. 3 halves, 3 over 2. 4 halves, 4 over 2, and so on. Okay? But remember this point. 2 halves makes 1 whole. 2 halves makes 1 whole. Remember this, because 1 half and 1 half together makes 1 whole. If one whole, if you look at the picture, this is 1 half and this is 1 half. When you put them together, they give you the whole pizza. So two halves makes 1 whole. Look at the number line. This number line is divided into steps of half. Divided into steps of half. Okay, so this is 1, this is 0, and this is 1. This tick is the half distance between 0 and 1. This tick is the half distance between 0 and 1. So this tick is called 1 half. So 1 half is the halfway between 0 and 1. 1 half is the halfway between 0 and 1. Okay, so let's count by halves. Now 1 half, 2 halves. I landed on 1. Okay, 3 halves here, 3 halves. Okay, 4 halves. I landed on 2. So 4 halves means 2. Why 4 halves means 2? Because every 2 halves makes 1 whole. So 2 halves and 2 halves together, 4 halves. These 2 halves makes 1 whole, and these 2 halves makes 1 whole. So 4 halves makes 2 whole. So we can say that 4 halves makes 2 whole. Let's complete counting by halves. After 4 halves, 5 halves. And I want you to look carefully here at 5 halves. 5 halves is in the half distance between 2 and 3. 5 halves is in the halfway between 2 and 3. Please take care of these points. 5 halves is in the halfway between 2 and 3. Let's complete counting by halves. Okay. After 5 halves, 6 halves. And 6 halves landed on 3. So 6 halves means 3. 6 halves is the same as 3. 6 halves is the same as 3. Let's complete. After 6 halves, 7 halves. And it is in the half distance between 3 and 4. 8 halves. 8 halves. I landed on 4. So I can say 8 halves is the same as 4. Okay, let's complete. 9 halves, and it is in the halfway between 4 and 5. It is the halfway between 4 and 5. Okay, 10 halves. 10 halves. I landed on 5. So I can say that 10 halves is the same as 5. Okay? If you divided 10 by 2, how many 2's in 10? There are 5 2's. So 10 divided by 2 equals 5. It is the same as division. So 10 halves equals 5. And 10 divided by 2 equals 5. So fractions is the same as division. Let's move forward. I have 3 halves here. Okay, 1 half, 1 half here. Okay, 2 halves, 2 halves, 2 halves here. And I landed on 1. And we said that 2 halves makes 1 whole. 2 halves makes 1 whole. Okay, let's complete. 3 halves. Here, 3 halves. Okay, where is 3 halves? 3 halves is between 1 and 2. So I can say that 3 halves is greater than 1 because it comes after 1, but it is less than 2 because it comes before 2. So 3 halves is greater than 1 and less than 2. But if you looked at the picture, 3 halves makes how many pizza? Jenny, 3 halves makes how many pizza?
Three.
3 halves
Me.
makes
One whole and half.
excellent, excellent, excellent. Jenny, 1 point. Okay, so Jenny said that 3 halves of pizza makes 1 whole pizza and 1 half of a pizza. Look at the screen how I write it. I write it like 1 whole pizza and 1 half of a pizza. When I read it, I read it like this: 1 and 1 half, 1 and 1 half. This combination of whole numbers and fractions, we call it mixed number. Mixed number, because I mix whole number and a fraction, so I call it mixed number. So let's sum up. We said that we counted we counted 3 halves, and we find that 3 halves is the same as 1 and 1 half, and we call it mixed number. 3 halves is equivalent to 1 and 1 half. Okay, and we can count in steps of 1 half on the number line like this: 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves. Okay, now it is your turn. Can any one of you tell me 4 halves is equal to what? I have 4 halves here, okay? And I said that every 2 halves makes 1 whole. So there are 2 halves here, and together makes 1 whole. And 2 halves here, and together makes 1 whole. Okay, so 1 whole and 1 whole makes 2 wholes. So 4 halves makes 2. 4 halves is the same as 2. And we can see this on the number line. Look at the number line. I will start at 0 and I will count in steps of 1 half. So this is 1 half, and it is exactly in the halfway between 0 and 1. Okay. 2 halves, it is the same as 1 whole. 3 halves, and I said that 3 halves is the same as 1 and 1 half. Okay, let's complete. 4 halves. 4 halves landed on 2. So 4 halves is the same as 2. Okay, halves are there in 3. I can make it in 2 ways. I can make it in 2 ways. Okay, the first way, using the number line. Look at the number line. I want to count in steps of half until I land on 3. Okay, this is 3. Let's count in steps of half. 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, 5 halves, 6 halves. So 6 halves is the same as 3. Okay, and the other way, I have 3 wholes. I have 3 wholes, and every 1 whole has 2 halves. Every 1 whole has 2 halves. Okay, so 3 times 2 equals 6. So 3 has 6 halves. Okay, 3 has 6 halves. Okay, so I can count in steps of 1 half, and I can multiply by 2 because every 1 whole has 2 halves. Okay, now I have a pizza, and it is divided into 4 equal parts. The colored part in red is called what? Let me listen to Macarius. Macarius, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. The colored part in red, I call it what? Yes, Macarius?
1 quart.
Yes. 1 what? Again.
Quart.
1 quarter. Because it is what? Sorry. 1 quarter means 1 over 4, because it is 1 out of 4 equal parts. 1 out of 4 equal parts. Okay. Okay. Now, let's count how many quarters in this pizza. This is 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Okay, so I have 4/4 to make the whole pizza. It takes 4/4 to make the whole pizza. So I can say one whole is equal to 4/4. One whole is equal to 4/4, and I can write it like this. One whole is 1 equal to 4/4 like this. 4/4. 4/4. So one whole is equivalent to 4/4. Okay? Now, please, let me know how many quarters in 2.